Chattacon. This is the author's world creation and character building panel thing. Crap, I suck at this.
It's good enough. It's good enough for government work.
All right, so we're going to go around the table and get a feel for how everybody creates their worlds and their characters and puts it into a cohesive mesh that we call novels. And just to help, oh, wait, we got a Karen.
Hi, Karen.
Why are you popping in and doing cameos, Karen? We love you, but my God, woman.
Awesome.
I told her to because Marissa's here, so we wanted to.
Oh, okay.
Bye.
Hi,
So we'll start by going around the table and get an introduction from everybody here. Jenny, you're top left. Let's start with you.
Thanks. I write under JF Posthumus. Currently have 2 novels out in the Lady of Death series, The Fae's Amulet and Death's Talisman. Short and sweet of that is it's a necromancer who has been in self-imposed hiding for a couple hundred years and is drawn out when a magical artifact is stolen. She's hired to track it down and gets into some trouble and mischief along the ways. The other short I have out is called Critters of Unusual Size, and that's about killer squirrels in a suburban area. So I currently am working on a fantasy universe that is supposed to come out some point. Hint, hint.
When I know I'm behind. All right, Ben.
Hey everyone, Benjamin Tyler Smith. I also have 2 novels out. Both are in the Fallen World post-apocalyptic universe, Blue Crucible and Blue Salvation. Very basic rundown of them is it's a story of mounted cops trying to save the world in a post-apocalyptic future, one city block at a time. I also have short stories in a couple of different universes. The short stories I want to plug today are my Necrolopolis short stories, put out through 3 Ravens. Necrolopolis is an IP of my own creation. It's dark fantasy. Basically, in it, you have a city where all the world's undead in this secondary world setting are gathering to await their chance to meet with the god of death, figure out why they're still trapped here on the mortal coil, and then cross over to the other side. Until then, there's about 4 million of them going stir crazy and getting into all sorts of mischief, crime, and shenanigans, and it's up to one world-weary necromancer to keep them all in line. We'll have a book coming out at some point this year to expand that universe, and hopefully that'll become a regular thing.
You and your props, man. You show off. All right, Mandy, your turn.
Hi, he's working right now, so he can be here. We published a self-published fantasy novel, The Black Lily. We're working on the sequel to that, and then we're also both working on some independent projects that we're hoping to get published eventually.
All right, Marisa.
Hey, I am Marisa Wolf. I have 3 novels, all co-written, all in the 4 Horsemen universe with Chris Kennedy Publishing. I have so far gotten to co-author with the fabulous Casey Azell and the fabulous Mark Wandry. And then I have somewhere between 12 to 15 short stories that I wrote all by myself that are in various anthologies, various publishing companies, various parts of science fiction and fantasy. And I am working on 6 novels this year, and we'll see how many of those come out. 2 are fantasy, 2 are science fiction, and 2 are somewhere in between.
John Drake.
Okay, I'm John Drake, and I have 3 novels out, all comedies. One about a Neanderthal engineer called Making Man, and then one about the Black Death in 14th century Europe, which is obviously a very funny part of history. That's called Cheating Death, and one called Killing Chance, which is a Genghis Khan satire. Working on a 4th, still working on it. William, sorry about that, but I'll have it to you any day now. Which is Zoomers, or currently titled Zoomers anyway. it's a bit unfortunately titled because it was named before COVID. So now everyone's going to think it's a story about people who are, doing lots of video calls and things. But it's actually a sci-fi comedy about time travel and trying to save all life in the universe, obviously. So so they're the 3 out and 1 nearly out. Honestly, it's nearly out. And that's me. And then a whole host of short stories, which are as far from comedy as you could get. So lots of really kind of morbid, morose short stories, which I'll probably chuck into a book at some stage, and then I'll have 5 out there. So that's me.
Holmes.
Yes, sir.
Well, spill the beans. Who are you? What do you do?
I'm sort of a big deal. Actually, no, I'm just kidding.
You're a maggot. Get down and give me 20.
I'm not sure I could. I'm 52 years old. Anyway, my name is John Holmes. I write under the pen name of J.F. Holmes. Please don't Google John Holmes because you will not find me. Other things. I have, I think, 20 books out there. 12 in the Irregular Scout Team 1 series, 2 Dragon Finalist Awards. Yay, before they got all political. Working on a new series called Fallen Empire, which is future science fiction based around mercenaries. I have a couple other different series in various different genres, and I run Canon Publishing, which is a vehicle for new and established writers to get some product, helping indies turn their work into reality. That's me.
And I'm William Joseph Roberts. I write sci-fi, fantasy, horror, and pretty much anything else that the evil mind squirrels demand of me. I think we've got a pretty good rounded panel. I mean, we've got everything from urban fantasy to hard mill sci-fi and straight up satire comedy. So, I mean, we're covering pretty much almost every genre, I think, with fantasy and everything else too. So when it comes down to building your worlds, what's the first thing that happens? And I know just about everybody's is going to be a little bit different. And think of your answers for the up and coming authors, the ones that want to be where you're at and who who haven't got anything published yet. They want to get their published books out.
Well, since I went last, I'll go first. All right. My worlds are created usually standing in the shower, thinking, "Oh, what if this happened?" Right? And I get a little evil brain worm that just kind of starts rattling around in there, and it just expounds from there. So, for example, I was thinking, wow, The Walking Dead really sucks because there's no military in it. What would it be like if the military was actually effective and did their job? It's not. So from there, I created a regular Scout one, and 12 books later, it's this massive world that spans 10 years and zombie apocalypse and all sort of stuff. Another time, I thought, what if Ender lost from Ender's Game? And that turned into a 3-book series. So really, it's just a spark of an idea that pops into my head.
Is that Offworld?
Yes, Offworld.
Okay.
No,
okay.
sorry. No, that's Invasion. Okay. Offworld is a flip of the aliens invade Earth thing, where we are the actual invaders, so to speak.
Okay.
So I'm a professional liar for my job. I'm a recruiter, sorry. But so this comes very natural to me to tell stories. I'm not the best looking guy in the world, so I have to be funny and just come up with things. So really, I've had this gift of a wild imagination, and I finally learned to harness when I started to put things down. So it's all my wife's fault because she dared me to do it. And if you dare me to do something, you'll find me outside with my tongue stuck to the floor.
But only if it's a triple dog dare.
No, I'll do it on a double, man. So that's my story, and that's where my stories come from.
All right. Who wants to go next?
I'll go. So for me, it really depends on what type of story I'm working on. I either start with the setting, if for some reason, there's just something really cool that comes to mind, kind of like what John was talking about, where you just get an idea in your head and you have to run with it, or it's going to drive you insane. Either that or I start with a cool character that I really want, usually the hero or maybe one of the supporting characters. For instance, for Necrolopolis, the whole idea came about because of what I do for a living. I work with a cemetery software company, and one of the first jobs I did in the company years back was data entry, where I'd be getting burial records. I'd have to enter them in, make sure they went to the right grave and whatnot. And going through the burial records, you'd find just interesting little comments that I started creating a text file of, just to, this might be a cool story idea. The first comment I found was, I think it was a type of headstone this lady had that was, the headstone had like loved and cherished her family or something on it, and as the marker. But all it said in the comments in the burial record was loved and cherished her casket. So I'm thinking of this lady that's just absolutely in love with her coffin. And to the point that when she dies, she comes back from the dead, digs herself out, digs the coffin up, and is showing it off to people. And that ended up being the beginning idea that created Necrolopolis. I first started off with it basically being a cemetery of undead, and you had the groundskeeper's the one having to keep everyone in line, but it eventually turned into an entire city. That'll just show how one little idea, which is why you should always write down the ideas or the inspirations you get, because you never know. I periodically go back to that file that's pages long now, just to come up with ideas either for this universe or for other things. And I've got other files like that.
You got to keep a slush pile. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
if you don't have a slush pile to pull from, then you're losing possible good ideas. All right, who wants to go next?
I'll go.
I'll go next.
Oh, go ahead, John.
Sure. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I suppose mine is kind of similar to Benjamin's, and insofar as with comedy, I think you can have the cool characters, and quite often I would start with a character that I like, but actually what tends to drive the comedy is some kind of juxtaposition. So like in Making Man, for example, the Neanderthal is an engineer, and in Killing Chance, Genghis Khan doesn't have any kids, and he's trying to find an heir to his clanate, and you can kind of build from there, and then you build the secondary comedy characters. So Genghis Khan, who obviously had a sweeping horde of thousands and thousands of soldiers, I gave him a human resources manager to be in the middle of all that, and obviously he wouldn't have had a human resource manager, but those kind of juxtapositions, and that kind of kicks, for me anyway, that kickstarts all the comedy, which in turn then can kickstart the world building as well. Like for my kind of writing for the comedy, and it's kind of full on comedy rather than a non-comedic novel with the odd kind of funny line in there. They're kind of full on comedies, and I suppose like someone like Terry Pratchett would have done a whole host, a huge amount of world building for Discworld, and really in depth, and you can really picture how it is and all that. Whereas, and I presume he thought of all that before he started writing, and certainly after a couple of books he would have thought that before he started each subsequent book. But then if you look at someone like Douglas Adams, I can't imagine that he thought of all that and then wrote it down. Like, I'm sure he started with the idea of the Earth being blown up for a hyperspace bypass, and then thought, well, someone needs to do that. Let's make the Vogons. And then they get on this ship and they think, well, how are they going to understand each other? Let's invent the Babelfish. And I imagine, I don't know, but I imagine he did it more kind of laying the tracks in front of him as he went, and ended up with this big world, which is kind of what I've ended up with Zoom. So with comedy, it depends which way you're going, whether it's the Pratchett way or the Adams way, as far as I can see. But certainly mine would be laying it like in the spoiler alert for Zoomers, but anyway, one of the characters is a kind of a petty thief, and the planet that he ends up on, they use diamond the way we use glass, and he just can't get over this, and then he's just trying to find ways to get the diamond. So and that lays the tracks for something else in the story, and lays the tracks for something else in the world that happens with the diamond, and it all just spreads from there. Like I don't think I could actually sit down and create a world and then say, right, there's the world, now I'm going to put a story in there. I don't think it would work for me. It would work for some people, but just not for me. I'd I've got to make it up as I go along, so I'm getting kind of taken along for the ride, the way the readers will do. You know? So.
All right. Everybody say hi real quick to Kincaid, the baby author of the entire group.
Oh,
Hi.
I
Why
can
you gotta say it like that, man?
Because you are, man. Hey,
Hello.
I know. Thank you, and thank you for the invites. It's nice to meet all of you.
figured it'd be nice to get his perspective in here as well. A little late to the game, so do your introduction real quick.
Yeah, my name's Andy Joseph. I'm working on an epic fantasy piece novel with William. It's the first of several series. I think Ben, did you read it? I think you read it, right?
Raven and the Crow.
Read it.
Yeah, it's called The Raven and the Crow: Dark Storm Rising. I don't want to take a lot of time, but Three Ravens decided to go ahead and pursue it with me, so I'm pretty dang excited. I don't look it maybe, but the inside is like this. The outside, I'm very professional and calm, but there you have it.
Okay, so we are in how we come about our ideas. So let's see. John and Ben is already gone. John Drake's gone. Ladies, would one of you like to go next?
Yes, I'll go. So a lot of what has already been said is true for me too. Sometimes it's the setting, sometimes it's the random moment. But what has helped me and might help some new authors out there, I got started in Pern fan fiction. And in the wild world of fan fiction on the internet, with Pern, we did character sheets. And so for probably 20 years, I did fan fiction and I did these persona sheets, and then had chances to play out these characters and see where the sheet worked and didn't work, much like sometimes outlines work and sometimes they don't for me. But really spending time thinking about, who do I want this character to be? What are they trying to do? How do they go about it? Has been really helpful, especially my first couple of novels have been in existing universes. So I get a lot of the structure given to me. And then I'm just really thinking about, who are the people in it in my story. I have not written a single character sheet in my fiction writing experiences, but I have those buckets in my head still of, okay, what do they look like? What do they act like? What might make them crazy mad or crack up or whatever it is? And then as I write them, that's a great basis for them to evolve from. And I found that with some of my world building too, and some of my short stories, where I have like a general idea, but as I write it, I flesh it out more. But man, those persona sheets were great practice in the early days.
Okay, so just like doing an author or a character interview then.
Basically, yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Eeny, meeny, Mandy. I'm picking on you.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry for my technical difficulties. Actually, that's funny because I also started out writing fan fiction, so that's how I originally got started writing back in high school, and that was really great because like world building probably is actually my least strong point. So it was a lot easier for me to have a world that's already exists to work in. Now when I write everything as original fiction, I'm still very much a character-based author. So I always start with the characters and their situation first, and then my world building just kind of comes about as I go for me. So it's kind of like, well, what situation happens next? What kind of world would this need to be for this situation to happen? So the Black Lily that I wrote is a dark fantasy, but it's not really high fantasy because it was really all focused more on like the court intrigue and things like that. So, the world building wasn't so much focused on, like different species and creatures and things like that. It was more based on kind of our history. So like I did a lot of research into like French history and the Renaissance and King Louis the 14th, the Sun King and stuff like that to give me a lot of inspiration from there. But then my current novel I am working on is high fantasy. So it's definitely a lot more of figuring out like what are all the different creatures and denizens and how do they all interact and coexist or don't coexist rather.
Okay. Let's see. Ginny and Kincaid. All right, fight.
No.
No. Oh, he's throwing you. Okay, go Kincaid. Your turn. You're throwing her under the bus. Your turn.
All right. First of all, thanks a lot, Jenny. Anyway, yeah, you know, I'm not really sure exactly what we're discussing. I think it's world building, and you know, I agree with Mandy. I'm a little bit more character driven. I do tend to start with characters, you know, and a lot of times I'll just pick characters either from my memory or based on people I know. I don't know if any of you guys saw the show Firefly. Of course, I'm a big fan.
Never heard of it.
I think everybody here has watched Firefly.
Right, of course. You know, I needed a go-between character, and I said, you know who I really like from that show is that Badger guy, and I wish I knew more about his story. And I just happened to write that this week, and as I was writing it, you know, and he's doing his hello, how are you? I'm like, I really want this guy to be in the story more. So I kind of based it on him a little bit. Not that it's all about him, but I try to go with people I know or things that I like. And you know, this is what I've been doing on my lunchtime, map building.
Oh, there you
So I
go.
try to do that as well.
I'm jealous of people who can build maps because I can't.
I know, neither can
I
I.
would say it's built. It's more like
That's an evil hole as equal as death scrolling through Facebook. You'll go down that spiraling pit of despair and never finish your map.
that's
Oh,
true.
yes.
I have a map for my story. I'm like, I haven't even finished it yet. I mean, I do have a general idea of where the characters are going to go, but you know, and this one I happened to go on to an old site I used to be a part of. Maybe you guys are part of it. It's called cartographersguild.com.
Yep.
And they got lots of maps on there. And as I was scrolling through some of my favorites, I looked at one. I was like, man, I really like that. It's not too big, and I based this map, you know, a little bit on that. But I like some of
do it
the
in
characteristics. I
Photoshop.
was like, I'm going to do that. I'm sorry, Jenny. Go ahead.
They have tutorials on how to make maps in Photoshop.
Okay.
Yes, yeah,
So that's
yeah.
where I learned how to do mine.
I used the cheap auto realm download that cost me nothing. So
Been there, done that.
I've done
Right,
it too. I kind of combined the two things.
Jenny,
Yeah.
your turn.
World building. Well, for the Cat series, the Lady of Death series, I had been wanting to write a book about a necromancer. And then a friend had a interesting event in her life. Her now ex-husband was caught cheating on her. So I wrote something to cheer her up that took place in a local building. It happens to be the historic Masonic building in Stanton. In Stanton, Virginia, is very historic. It's actually, you know, the draw is because it's a historic city. So I took that, and then after that, I was like, I need to write a story about this character because she's a little snarky. And from there, I just filled in the story using local places, Thorn Rose Cemetery, other places in Stanton. I created the restaurant tavern in Waynesboro just to broaden the locations. And I used what I knew of the area, what I knew of the people. And from there, it was easy to just throw in magic. For the fantasy world, I got lucky. My husband has been playing D&D for a couple decades, and he and his cousin had created the world, and we've been playing D&D in it. And since he helps me by throwing things off, sometimes we co-write. Don't let him know I said that. But from there, we expanded the universe by just being like, okay, we need a world. So what would be over on this land? What would be over in that land? The Eastern lands are more Asian styled. So I actually ended up writing a character from that area just to flesh it out a little. And it's a medieval fantasy world. So there are a lot of ways you can draw in inspiration from fairy tales to Tolkien to Forgotten Realms and Dragonlance.
Mhm.
Just have to make sure you don't use anything that's
Copyrighted.
copyright, trademarked. When in doubt, make your own.
All right,
And
now when it comes to world building, character building, or just building your story up and getting from point A to point B, what's your most hated part of the process, and how do you get past it? Oh, John, we got a volunteer, sucker.
But I hate descriptions and saying, you know, the walls look like this and the grass look like that, and that I don't like reading it particularly, but I can't write. I don't enjoy writing it. Maybe I can write it, but I don't enjoy doing it. Which is why most of my books is, you know, they're kind of 80% dialogue and and 20%. Oh yeah, they're in a house, by the way, when all that was happening. You know, so yeah, I and the way I avoid it is by just trying to keep the dialogue as entertaining and as snappy and witty as possible, so to distract from the fact that I haven't actually described where they are, you know. So or I set it on the Mongol plains, the steppes of Mongolia, where you don't have to describe it all because they're just in a big field the whole time, you know. So that's how I avoid it, but that's what I can't stand doing it. And I may not be any good at that either.
Okay.
I'm kind of have the same problem with describing physical places. I think I'm very good at describing people, and I'm great at writing dialogue. So that's a lot of the majority, you know, especially because everything's character driven that I write. So dialogue is a big part of it. So usually, like as far as the physical description of a place, that's something that I kind of add in like my second writing. And for me, I found the best thing for me to do is to just try to find a place that looks like what I'm thinking of, either, you know, go searching online, or if it's something out in nature, go out in nature and like just start trying to describe everything around me, and then turn that into a description in the book.
Okay. Anybody else?
I actually do, and you know, I have so much experience. I'm sure you can all learn a lot from me, having written absolutely nothing that's been. So if you've heard this, I apologize. Yeah, my issue is I of course, like John said, I love dialogue. Dialogue, it does so much for you. You really get a look into the characters, and you can see what they're like, and it's not just what they're like, but how they look and how they act and how they think, and things can change so quickly. My issue is always, you know, the word said. Do I want to use? I've heard so many different things, like, oh, you just need to put said. No, how about replied? How about quipped? How about any number?
And that is an ongoing argument that will never die.
Right.
This is very true.
And what I have found is that
it's a balance.
And that's, I wish I could hear from all of you what you think, but ultimately I said, you know what? I'm going to write it the way I think it should be.
Yep.
And if you don't like it, I mean, that's okay.
It really depends on the genre you're writing too, because
also audio or not. If you're going to do audio, you know, an audio version of it, try listening to something where the only word in it is said. It will drive you batty.
Oh yeah, it throws me off a lot of times.
Yeah, and I've heard people complain about it. You know, you can't use said. You should only use said. I just say, you know what? I'm sure you guys do this too. I just read it aloud, and if it sounds good, I'm like, I'm going to stick with the way that sounds. If they don't like it, okay, I will deal with that. But that's probably my biggest issue, is just making sure the dialogue, you know, what it just flows along and is correctly used.
That's when you hire someone like me who's an editor.
And I have another question. Somebody mentioned D&D. What is that?
Dungeons and Dragons.
What?
You know, I was kidding. I know it.
Okay, I was going to say, like, what?
How can you not know?
You wrote a fantasy novel and you don't know?
I was like, is anybody going to bite on that? Nah. Yep. Okay, good.
I guess we shouldn't assume that our audience knows, really. Because if we had an audience now, they might be like asking questions like, what is that? You know, so.
And that's one thing that we're going to miss in doing this. But, you know, we can feed off of each other. So that's all good.
Who doesn't miss guys in their office and every room in their house? Really?
I miss D&D so much. My whole group fell apart. So
I'll say the thing that I am terrible at in writing is just letting the first draft be the first draft. I get so precious about it, and I need to like, oh no, this isn't the right word, or this isn't going to be the right sentence here. Instead of just like, just write it so it exists, and then you can go back. I think I would be a lot more productive in writing if I would just let the first draft be the first draft, but I physically can't. I have not yet broken that in myself.
Terry Pratchett said that the first draft is just you telling yourself the story. And I think that's spot on.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's absolutely spot on.
Yeah, and there's somebody, I think it was either Larry Correa, it was somebody who said something like, the point of the first draft isn't to be good. The point of the first draft is to be written. And I tell myself that every time, and I'm still like, oh, but not this word. So I'm embracing brackets. Like I'll put things in brackets to go back to them. I right now have a whole section of a short story that is just like, fill this in later. But it is so hard to just let the first draft be itself.
See, research is probably my downfall because I will go spiraling down a research hole because like, oh, hey, what's that? And what's that? And what's that? And the squirrels just keep jumping from one subject to another. And the next thing you know, I've lost my entire writing time for the morning and I got to go to the day job. It's like, crap.
Yep, that happens to me a lot. And sometimes it's not research I really want to do. It's research that I think I have to do in order to be able to tell the story. And sometimes you need it. Sometimes you just need to tell the story and not worry too much about that.
For one sentence, and I spent 4 hours.
Yeah,
that's a joy of comedy because it doesn't have to be right. You know, you can just say whatever you like.
That's funny.
That's one of the reasons. It's one of the reasons I love fantasy more than like hard science fiction. At least to write.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, but you still have to do research for fantasy.
Well, it depends on what it is. I mean, you can get away with less research in fantasy because, well, you just kind of make it up. And we all know fairy tales and dragons and elves. So, you know, we got that basis to build. But when you got to get this, well, I spent probably a good hour digging all the information out for the Rods of God, for Blue Salvation, for Ben.
Yeah, that's right. You did help me with
I
that.
actually did the calculations to make sure that the tungsten rods were the right diameter with the right length so they'd have the exact impact velocity so nobody could argue with them.
Yep, exactly.
Because somebody's going to do the math.
Rod.
Right, it did the rod thing. I don't know.
It doesn't matter. Somebody's going to argue with you anyway.
That's
true.
That's also true.
But you spelled all your made-up names wrong. What do you mean they're a made-up language? Yeah, but you spelled them wrong. Oh, okay.
Okay, then, yeah. Although the last time I did 4 hours of research completely accidentally, I came out of it with a whole new fantasy novel. So, you know.
Well, there you go. See, sometimes it pays off.
It can pay off in other stories someplace, depending on what you're writing.
I do love that about fantasy though, is I don't have to worry about, you know, is this scientifically accurate and all that. Like I got caught up at one point in my current novel that I'm working on where I was like trying to figure out Fae reproduction because there's all these different species, and if these Fae reproduced, what species would they create? And then I was like, you know what? It's magic. Like I could just make it up. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how like the alleles would work in humans because they ain't human. So
well, if you want to like go with a manual, then I do have a copy of the guide for unlawful carnal knowledge for D&D. I think it's for the D20 system, so I could pass that off to you.
I did research on decomposition of, it ended up being they used pig's corpse, but yeah, I did that on my lunch break one day. For a fantasy novel, that was like one scene.
Did anybody dig up Jenny's back garden?
Right, don't research.
You know the FBI just look at author search results and like, no, okay, we know what you're doing.
Well, I found
what, John?
Out.
No, Jenny's talking. Ladies first.
Well, I was gonna say I printed out. It was like a booklet of poisonous plants and what it did. I kept it in my desk drawer. No one found it. It was disappointing.
Nobody's going to find it till your husband goes missing. And then the cops are going to find it and be like,
Nobody told you they found it. Everyone's just tiptoeing
I
around.
was hoping the coworker who kept going through my stuff would find it.
So,
I stopped eating your food. I mean,
so
Exactly.
I let my fans sharpshoot my work. I was an artilleryman in the Army and on a plane staff, and I write a lot of military fiction, and put in my fan group a lot of my draft work, what I call my vomit, right, which is just what's used out of my brain. I put it up there, and I have a lot of people who will give me feedback like, oh no, the lights inside a UH-60 Blackhawk are not red, they're green, right? Or, you know, the Army stopped using that, you old bastard. I'm sorry. The Army stopped using that, you old bleep, about 10 years ago, okay, right? So, you know, so I get a lot of that research given to me by the people who read my work as a draft, and it also keeps them interested because they want to see what's next. And the fans themselves feel involved in the process of actually producing.
You're using them for alpha readers, more or less.
In a way, yeah, and they help kind of drive the story because they'll read a chapter and I'll get feedback on it and be like, okay, well, that, you know, this, based on their feedback, this is what they want to see next. So that's a lot of where I get my research done, by people who are subject matter experts on things that I am not. So.
Right. Okay. Characters. What is one of your most dreaded parts of character creation that you get hung up on and huh?
Naming them.
Yes. Yes.
Hey,
Naming
I had
them
an
is
easier time naming my kids than my characters.
Google
The names
random
always
name
have to mean
generator.
something.
that's amazing.
Well,
For kids.
I honestly jump on Facebook or Twitter and scroll. Let's see. Drake's been in. Let's see. Marissa. I think most of y'all actually been named somewhere at some point, except for Kincaid.
Jenny's not ever going to be, because I'm not typing Jenny Posthumus every single time I want to write somebody's name. Marisa Wolf, hey, that's short. I'll write it, but I tend to avoid long, complicated names. Or I give
Posthumus
them,
is amazing.
It
Well,
is
it's
a great
cool,
name for a writer.
but
Yeah.
I'll like pick this way. I can just call him Ski, right? So once or twice I'll write Mirjia Ski, and then I'll write Ski, and I'll give him a nickname. I try and avoid long names. Now I have to change the name of one of my main characters in my next book because his name is Major David Kincaid. And nothing against you, Kincaid. I don't know you from anywhere, and I don't want everybody to be like, oh, that's Kincaid D. Joseph. I'm like, but then again, why not? You're here. Guess what? My major character is now named after you.
You better get all the ladies.
Now that's one of the bonuses to writing mill sci-fi, though, because everybody's got a call sign.
True.
So you
True.
get through that first one, you shorten it down, and you're done.
True. Kincaid, he doesn't get any ladies. He's busy fighting elves who are wrecking New York City. So
You do whatever you want to do, my man. It's
it's
just
not what I want to do. It's what happens.
That's what has to happen.
When my fans send it, my fans are like, where do you get this stuff? I'm like, I don't make this up. It's just happening someplace else in the multiverse, and I'm channeling. So I'm not making it, you know.
And I wanted to mention something about the naming thing, and maybe it's strange, but you know, my real life job is I'm a teacher. I get kids' names all the time. I'm like, what is that name? I'm writing that down. I got 600 students at this school that I can look up. I'm like, yes, I like the middle of your maiden name. I'm going with that.
Yeah.
Now, John Drake,
Pretty cool.
you have one unique way in all three of your novels of your character names.
I do. I mean, I do.
I know for a fact because I've read all three of your novels. So
Yeah, that's right. Just give me a second.
well,
yeah, well, I
it's
suppose
midnight there.
Oh yeah, quarter to 11. Right. And then I'll be grand. So yeah, the main character in my first one, which is Making Man, the Neanderthal engineer, I call all the characters were named after kind of something rocky, usually like, you know, like granite or whatever. The main character I called Cobble, because he was an engineer and inventor, so he was cobbling things together, and cobblestones, and so it had a few little different meanings and stuff. And actually, that goes for making man, because he's a man who makes things, so he's a making man. But also, the Neanderthals meet the Cro-Magnons, and and so they make modern man, because they're interbreeding. So yeah, I love a good pun, something that just works on a few different levels, even if it's just something simple like a name. If there's a few different things, then yeah, I do like that. What else did I do? What was in the Cheating Death? Did I have something?
Well, I know for a fact, Killing Chance, the way
sorry,
Jockey and
Killing Chance. So yeah, I had great fun with that, actually. That was good fun. I really enjoyed naming those. So I had a Mongol army and a Jin army, so the ancient Chinese army, and the leader of the Jin city was called Ru Ling, and the captain of the armory division in the Mongol horde was Captain Padding, and it's just like silly stuff. And then Captain Wee was the in the ballistics regiment, so he was Captain Wee, and all that kind of stuff, like loads of stuff, like a guy called La Fing, who was just a bit of a cheeky guy, and his sidekick who was just sick of him and was just morose all the time. He was called Maud Lin. And yeah, all that kind of stuff. That goes right through that book. Yeah, absolutely. That was great fun with that one. Yeah.
All right. So how do you deal with writer's block when you get to a spot in the story that you've got to come up with a new scene or something like that, you're totally lost at that point?
I drop it. I go write something else.
Yep.
I will walk away from a book for 2 to 3 months if I have to, and work on something else.
Okay.
I'll usually jump to a different scene, either a different project, but usually I'm writing so close to my deadline that I can't walk away. So I will instead try to get to a different scene, and again, trying to embrace those brackets, man, those little like square brackets, and I'll just put in here like, something has to happen here. I'll find it later. And then I skip on to the next thing. Often also the best advice I ever read that works for me is, if your story doesn't feel like it's going anywhere, blow something up, see what happens.
Or kill
Pretty
somebody.
much,
Yeah.
have someone kick the door in.
That works.
I love that.
Now, every time you read one of my stories, when you see something explode, you can be like, I know what happened there. And you're probably right, honestly.
It's like, oh, tough weekend. I get it.
For me,
kick indoor.
What, Mandy?
well, for me, one of the nice things about co-writing is that I can just speak to my co-author, my husband, if I get stuck somewhere, and be like, hey, this is where I'm at. Even when we're not co-writing, like my current novel, I'm working on my own, but I'll be like, well, this is where I'm at. This is my dilemma that I'm trying to figure out how to solve. And he'll just keep asking me questions and like throwing ideas out there, because he's also a creative person. So, here, what about this? And then I'd be like, well, no, that wouldn't work because of this. And then we'll basically just talk it through. Sometimes we'll talk stuff through for hours, and then we'll figure it out. And then I'll just be like, yay, okay, now I can go write. So yeah, that's for me, probably the best thing is talking it through, with a fellow author or creative person. So.
Well, that's important. You got to have a sounding board to bounce ideas off of. I mean, so I've jumped on Discord with Ben more than a few times, and he ain't said the first word. I'm just rambling and just blah, 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 blah. I know what I'm doing now. And I'm jotting notes down. It's like, okay, thanks, Ben. And you just needed that sounding board is all it was.
Yeah. I with you the other day.
Yeah. I was just listening.
Yeah. And that's usually what we do. It's either we listen to music. Of course, we're always distracted because kids. But sometimes I'll do art. But a lot of times it's just me talking with my husband, with Mark. Or now, calling you and asking, hi, can you help?
Well, that's what this Arthur network is for, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
We can scratch each other's backs and listen and bounce ideas sometimes.
It's helpful. Who else uses name generators?
I sometimes do them.
Not just me. Yay. I have a there's a webpage called lino.it. It's like an online cork board. It took a lot of scouring to find that thing, I assure you. But it's free. And I have a cork board with like Post-it notes filled with links to generators of all sorts. And it's nice and helpful.
I need one of those for planets at the minute.
Mm.
I'm trying to name planet after planet, and it's like I can't think of any more.
There's there's this one website. I'll have to dig the link out. It has all these different name generators. I mean, you can go. I don't remember. It's like fantasy name, sci-fi name, elves, dwarves, planets. You just go down this whole. They got this big conglomerated list, and you just start clicking it. It's like, okay, rerun. Oh, I like that one. Cool, copy.
I see fantasynames.com.
Maybe
one of them, and they have like all different types of beings, places, real and fantasy. Seventh Sanctum is great for names of all sorts. They also can do word prompts type stuff, character descriptions.
I'll dig that link out and I'll put it in the back end of this video so anybody else can grab a hold of it.
Another generator that's really fun is a old-timey curse word generator. Like it just pulls up all the old curses. I had a character back in the fan fiction days that was a very creative cursor, and you know, after a couple of years I kind of ran out of ideas, and I found this generator. And now I will say one of my favorite things in world building is figuring out what do they curse about, like what are their curse words, because it seems like such a standard part of human nature. And so it's just really, and sometimes I'll just go to these old-timey generators and like they talked a lot about like slime. Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Well, now one thing that I do a lot of is random input, because I get paranoid that I'm going to have a repeat of a repeat of a repeat, and it's going to be the same kind of characters over and over. So I'll ask the kids, I'll ask on Facebook, hey, what's this person like? And with no other input other than just throw something at me. And I'll go down through the list of answers like, ooh, I like that. Cool. There we are. Just to get a little bit of random input into the creation process.
That's something I've run into with my zombie killer series, the regular Scout Team 1. I'm up to 12 books, and eventually you get a little repetitive. I mean, it's hard to come up with a new thing to do for your characters without just running amok and killing everybody. And eventually you don't want to kill off your favorite characters because your fans will come to your house with pitchforks and torches. And, what do you mean you killed Britt O'Neill? How dare you? I've actually had people say that to me. I mean, it's fiction. She's not real. Okay. But that's one of the things that as you get more and more into a series, how do you avoid that? Because characters are characters, bad guys are bad guys. How do you come up with new threats? Do you always up the ante? I've gone everything from a simple ambush to a civil war with people dropping nukes on each other. How do you top that, right? So on my 13th or my last book, I had to go all the way back and do a story from the timeline that I had to retcon into it. So that's one of the issues that I run to as a series author. So just thought I'd throw that out there.
Okay.
Yes, and I'm probably the opposite because I've only got the 3 out and 4 if you count the one I'm writing now, and I made a very conscious decision to do very different ones, kind of like John Boyne does. Like every John Boyne book is totally different. It's set in all different places and all different subjects, and so we've got the Neanderthal, the caveman time, the Black Death time, the Mongol hordes, and now sci-fi, because for that reason I don't want to feel like I'm just writing the same book over and over again with a different character name and a slightly different bit of jeopardy, and just so it's completely fresh, so I'm fresh writing it and someone's fresh reading it.
Thank you guys for showing up and talking to Chattacon for us and all the aspiring authors out there. So we're going to go around the table and close this thing out for the night. Ben, we'll start with you.
All right, guys, again, Benjamin Tyler Smith. You can find my stuff at benjamintylersmith.com. I'm also on Twitter and Facebook at Ben Tyler Smith, I think, for both of them, or just look up my full name. I am currently being published through Chris Kennedy Publishing for the Fallen World books. Also, a Four Horsemen book will be coming along this year. I'm being published through Three Ravens with my Necrolopolis short stories, as well as some other things that we're working on behind the scenes. And those are the main places you'll find me at the moment.
You and your props. I swear, I think you're more of a whore than me sometimes.
It's just
Jenny.
cool. It's just cool having them now, man.
Jenny, your turn.
My name, I write under JF Posthumus. You can find me on Amazon from JF Posthumus. And I have a website, jfposthumous.net. I have a author FB page. I try to keep it up, no promises. So.
All right. Marisa.
MarisaWolf.net. It's sort of updated. It'll be more updated in the future. Also, if you enjoy dogs and rocks and random hikes, then on Instagram, I am at BookDogs.
Drake.
Okay, I'm on Twitter, John Drake Writer. I'm on Facebook, confusingly, author John Drake. And you can find my stuff at threeravenspublishing.com. Is that right? I think that's right.
Yep.
And on Amazon as well.
Holmes.
I am on canonpublishing.us for my publishing company, and j.f.holmes at Amazon. And the fan group for our work is the Command Post on Facebook and MeWe. So that's where you'll find me.
Okay. Mandy.
I'm Mandy Burkhead. I write sometimes alone, sometimes with my husband. We pretty much have a combined social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Those are the main ones. Everything is at Burke Shelf. So my first part of my name, Burke, then Shelf. That's where you find me.
Okay. Kincaid.
I write under Michael K. Falciani. You can find me at michaelkfalciani.com. My book is actually in the process of being published at Three Ravens. I'm hoping it's by summertime. Correct? I will have it out.
That's what I'm shooting for.
That's what we're shooting for. So I'm on Facebook at Michael K. Falciani. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. All at Michael K. Falciani. Whatever.
Okay. And I am William Joseph Roberts. You can find me at williamjosephroberts.com or threeravenspublishing.com. And thank you again, Chattacon.
Thanks, Chattacon.
Thanks a million.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
John.